Oh, hi there. We're glad you're watching one of our virtual lunch presentations. We have a lot of good information that we've been accumulating over the past several years, and we invite you to look down just below here and hit the subscribe button, and the little bell will give you a reminder of when our next presentation is published here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for your support. Appreciate it. Let us get started with the main part of our program, and that is that FEMA announcement that went out on Monday, telling everybody to be very careful because you're in danger of having your EAS box hacked and cracked and bad things, visions of the zombie alerts, right? So we invited Bill Robertson from DASDEC, Digital Alert Systems, and he's got Adam to back him up here, and Jeff and I, and we'll talk about EAS and security. And so, Bill, let's turn it over to you to get started. Just unmute yourself.
Got it, no problem. I've got a little quick presentation that I want to kind of help on this, if I can.
Yep.
So if everybody can see that, then
Yep.
I will continue on. So the big thing around it is obviously, you know, this announcement from FEMA and what's going on. So I wanted to kind of go through a little bit of what it's about, what prompted it, what it means, and really how to proceed. Also kind of want to review steps we've taken on our side to take care of some of these things, and just to let a quick summary of it. So when we look at the advisory, I mean, really what came out is it indicates there's a vulnerability. There's not a lot of details on software version or anything else like that, but indicates that there's a vulnerability. It does correctly identify it as public knowledge, and you'll find out this has been known for quite a while. But it does do a good thing too in suggesting 3 standard actions, and these are actions that we have repeatedly stated to people about keeping things up to date, keeping it behind a firewall. Look for strange activity. If there's unauthorized access or anything else, things that you can do actively to make sure that you're not getting attacked or the possibility of it. So again, applaud, and I'll say this later too, we really applaud the actions of FEMA in bringing this up, because it puts it front and center, lets people learn about it, or hey, all of a sudden, you know, these things have been doing, they haven't looked at them for a while, bring it back, let's take a look and see what's going on. So a little bit of background on what this vulnerability was all about. So in 2019, we became aware of vulnerabilities on the DASDEC and OneNet software. This was a version 3 type of thing that we knew of, and it related to what's called cross-site scripting. Basically what it is when a web page is presented, that a hacker can try to insert different characteristics. Instead of using like a standard password type of thing, they'll try to insert code into the password area or into the username area and see if the system will respond. And in some ways, using this cross-site scripting type of thing, you're able to gain certain levels of access into the box. Now, doesn't mean you've hacked into the box per se, but you might be able to steal other session information on the thing. But nonetheless, there are different variations of this cross-site scripting. Well, we launched an investigation. We wanted to identify what it might be and really understand the risks. And we did learn that our older series of software, version 2 and below and version 3, were susceptible to this cross-site scripting. We did, and then later on in 2019, we released our version 4.1, which addressed all the vulnerabilities on that and added a whole bunch of new features. So really, if you will, the statement that FEMA says about keeping your software current goes hand in hand with just that. If there's things identified, Bash is another one. There was vulnerabilities identified a long time ago. You want to keep up in what's going on with the current stuff. So again, recognize this goes back to 2019. So this is, again, it's public knowledge because we've known about it. We mitigated the circumstances. We even identified and gave attribution to the researcher in our version 4.1 release notes. So that's really the key thing. What it means, it's nothing. If your equipment is properly secured behind firewalls, proxy servers, something to get it. The issue around this really centers around devices that are culpable, and they are culpable because the person, whoever has it, has not put it behind a firewall. It's on the open internet, and No one in their right mind would take any general piece of equipment that's not a security appliance and put it on the open internet. So really, if your equipment is properly secured, it means nothing. If your equipment software is updated, the same thing. So you want to make sure that you've taken care of that. So really the key around this is do not hook this type of equipment directly to the internet. Number one, get it behind a firewall. The proper configuration on this is to make sure there is some kind of security, firewall, some appliance or something that mitigates this. You can't steal what you can't find. This is kind of the thing. If it's really secure, you want to make sure that it stays that way. The number two thing is keep your software current. That's it. I mean, our current release right now is version 4.4. Check with your other vendors, make sure. Follow up. There's announcements that come from the manufacturers that say, hey, we've got a new software release. Follow up on those. Don't just ignore them. Really check with the manufacturer's website. Make sure, look for updates, anything around that. That's going to be critical to this thing. And really promptly install it. If a new update comes out, there's a reason that it's come out. There's other things around it that improve it. And a good deal of this stuff is the constant evolution, of different things that are found out to make sure that these things are secure. Now, some of the stuff that we've done to try to mitigate some of these things and get ahead of it, we have issued a number of white papers. Our first white paper on security was issued in 2011. So we're talking 11 years ago was our first white paper that described a lot of details, what's going on, what you should be looking at as a broadcaster, what you have as security things. And this goes into great depth on that. It talks about firewalls. It talks about proxies. It tells how to set up DMZs. It outlines different network configurations that will provide a greater level of security. Now, the interesting thing about this is recognize that this is ahead of where we were with CAP, and we're trying to get ahead of that, knowing and recognizing that as soon as the FEMA iPause thing became something that you had to do and you were mandated to hook these things up to the internet, the likelihood that security issues were going to come up were there. And it's really important, again, around these particular things. Well, in 2014, we actually issued a second white paper, and this is a paper that kind of summarizes some of the previous information, but it puts it in a nice tabular form that talks about what are recommended practices, what you should be doing, make sure you're doing this. And it repeats a lot of the same information. Again, get these things behind firewalls, set up security types of things, set up protocols around it. Make sure you've changed the password. Don't rely on the default password. In fact, we've instituted quite a while ago that once you log into the box, you are forced to change the password. Again, same kind of thing, so that people aren't vulnerable in leaving the things with the same passwords and things like that. And you want to use a strong password. Again, not some simple thing, as we always know, password or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ooh, there's my great password. You really want to be cognizant of this and know what's going on. Now, some of the other stuff that we've done too is we have a statement on our website about vulnerability reporting, how you can report a vulnerability. If you find something, if there's a researcher or something else like that, we have a way. It outlines how to report. It outlines the detailed information that we need to assess the matter. What version are you on? What hardware types things? So we can look at that and make an assessment on it ourselves. And that's important. The key thing is, we want these people to contact our website that we've set up, or excuse me, an email account specifically around this, security@digitalalertsystems.com. Very simple, very straightforward. So another thing that we've done is on the equipment itself, we have a label. And in fact, that's what the label says. Always, protect this equipment behind a firewall. And that label is stuck to the top of the box. So even when you go and get ready to install it, this label is front and center. You can see it, it's there. We're trying to, again, reference this to people so it becomes very much the case. It's not like we told them one time, it's multiple things. Now, we also have updated our website to, there's a security advisory section on there. We've got the latest stuff regarding what the August 2022 FEMA statement is on there, but there's a host of other things too. All those white papers I talked to you about, you can go to this site, go to our main site, and you can actually get it. So this is security advisory page is there. It covers security related matters. It talks about the different things. It summarizes the current situation I said, and it has links on all of the white papers that I just talked about. It explains what you should do, how to report an issue, all these things. So the papers that I just talked about are available to you if you want to go and dive into that a lot further. So really, it's a lot more of the same kind of stuff. In summary, it's very simple. Keep the equipment behind firewalls. Well, it just says B, but it's supposed to be behind firewalls. Mistake on that one. Keep the equipment behind a firewall. Security is key. Keep your software updated. And really the big thing for us, as I said before, we applaud the FEMA's outreach. It's getting this front and center. Let people know, pay attention to this, because it doesn't go away. These people are always kind of trying to look at this thing. First and foremost, again, that thing I cannot stress further is the fact that these things are not security appliances. They're not meant to be right on the open internet. And we have found them. I mean, one of the things that we've done too is we've actively gone out using search tools that are not general search tools. You can't really use something like a Google or a Yahoo or like that to find these devices, because they are purposely set up in such a way that they kind of instruct those types of web browsers, hey, these are not the droids you're looking for. So it's kind of a Star Wars-esque thing that, hey, don't bother. There's nothing really here for you. But there are other search tools that are available that you can find these, and we have found them. We have actually tried to locate the customers that have them still on the open internet, and that's been one of the big things. So again, FEMA's outreach just helps people know if they can get the knowledge and they go and look at this thing. One thing I would also say, like our particular devices, depending on the particular configuration, you can have multiple Ethernet ports on one of our devices. You don't want to look at just one and say, I'm in the clear. We have seen in the past where they've got, everything's firewalled on one side, and then someone hooked up a cable modem on port 2. No firewall or anything else like that. So you're going to want to make sure, and I can't stress it enough, that you are in a protected zone and you've got that. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions if anybody has anything.
So I've got firewalls on everything, and I think it's critical, and for a lot of other reasons besides the EAS box. But I mean, is it any worse, any more dangerous to have this on the internet than it is to have this listening to broadcast radio frequencies and then rebroadcasting whatever you hear? Seems like anybody with an eBay FM transmitter sitting outside a studio can transmit whatever they want as an EAS message.
And Bill, you're absolutely right. I mean, you can usurp it. There's YouTube videos that indicate that how to do that, and that's obviously a dangerous situation there if someone really wants to try to do that. So it could be accomplished, but again, anything that we can do to help secure that, you're going to find some nefarious people that are trying to do certain things, and with that impact, it's less. And by the way, with those things, they have to be physically close by, in close proximity, versus these guys could be anywhere in the world. So, I mean, that's one of the other things around location and other elements that you've got a little bit of physical geofencing, if you will, versus the fact they could be anywhere.
Of course, if you're on a college campus and you say, oh, well, the college has a firewall, but if you've got 8,000 students at your college campus, you've got 8,000 idle hands, or, well, I guess that would be 16,000 idle hands.
True.
Bill, one of the questions that we could raise here, and certainly this is something that the EAS community as a whole needs to pay attention to and program our minds and in our equipment. It's changing ever since we were looking at the situation back with the zombie alert, or the country music idiot on satellite. Unfortunately, he's become a multimillionaire, even though he really made a mess of the EAS system. But we have to protect ourselves as we go along. And putting a box on 24/7 automatic and not paying attention to what's coming in is a great way to have more problems.
Yeah. And there's there's a lot of other things that you could do to dive down. And as we outline in our one of our papers, things like whitelisting, as it's referred to, so that only people with certain IP addresses have access into it. There's again a range of different things about wanting to do and looking at these things. And it's not going to go away. This is going to be there because people are always going to be kind of looking at this stuff. So we have to be vigilant. And again, FEMA bringing this up and bringing the attention, hopefully getting to those people that have boxes on the open internet. And it's surprising to know that in this day and age that there are people that are doing it. Now, why would they do it? Well, some of it is because I'm just going to be forthright and say it's laziness. Okay, I don't want to set up a VPN. I want to have remote access to the unit, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick it on the open internet, and so be it. Those kinds of things, and that laziness is something that invites a problem. And if you're not going to do it, if you don't understand how to set up remote access to a remote IP, you need to kind of figure that out, because again, leaving these things in any way, shape, or form exposed is not a good way to conduct business. So, you got to get past that. You've got to recognize what we need to do things right and do things right. So if some of the people that have left these things out, if they find this, if it raises to the attention, and it seems like it's percolating around in a number of different ways, and what's going on. Also recognize that the FEMA thing indicated that this is going to be, presented at DEF CON. Okay, it's old stuff, kind of showing that stuff, but fine, so be it. The big thing around it is, again, if you can't see it, you can't find it. You want to be as obscure as you possibly can.
So
there's another way to do it too.
To summarize from what you said, if they're on version 4.1 or 4.4 of your software, they don't have to worry at all, except for one thing: don't go direct to the internet.
Yeah, what we did with that was we mitigated any kind of cross-site scripting thing, and that's just one way to tamp it down. But the real important thing is, regardless of tamping down that, it shouldn't be exposed in the first place. Right. Jeff Welton. Jeff, tell us, because you've done this, you connect a piece of gear to the internet. How long does it take?
Well, our record right now is 19 seconds.
Yep.
And for what it's worth, there are currently 26 visible DASDEC units, 1 EN's online. 3 of them have no firewall in front of them, and there may or may not have been one that's still using the default login, which a Google search found me very quickly.
Yep.
So, that's what I say. You need the firewalls, you need the VPNs, you need to have some sort of protection.
Yes, Richard.
Yeah, there is another way to insulate yourself, and that's to not put the EAS box directly on, even through a VPN, but to get if you have internet connectivity there, put a PC there and just make sure the PC is there so you could get in remotely. There are several VPNs you can set up to do this very easily. And that also gives you access to every other piece of equipment that has a screen you can access to manage. By doing that, the EAS box is not touching the internet directly.
Richard, do you recommend TeamViewer, AnyDesk, remote desktop connection? What are your recommendations?
My main client uses LogMeIn, and we have never had a security issue with LogMeIn so far. Maybe that's I have to say that, but basically I just find it very useful if I'm talking to a site out in Amboy, and I'm in Ventura County, that to be able to not only see the EAS box, but be able to see the transmitter, Untitled transmitter there, the AC switch, the satellite receiver, and everything else. And it just is another level of management you can do.
Excellent. Chris, I see your hands up.
Hello, everybody. Am I unmuted yet? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to put a little more stress on passwords because I haven't seen that discussed. And I think what I want to stress is you should use complex passwords And you should not put anything in that password that might be guessed by someone who knows either you or your staff or your station. If you put the password, okay, this KNX971 FM, it's an easy one to remember, but boy, it's an easy one to guess too. So the old CompuServe adage I always liked, they required passwords to have two unrelated words separated by a random punctuation. Now that's fairly simple. As long as those words are not related to each other and are not anything that could be guessed in relation to you, they might be vulnerable to a dictionary thing, but somebody needs to go to a lot of trouble. But I'm not just suggesting that that's the only way. The more complicated the password is, you know, sometimes these things that generate passwords randomly, those are pretty secure because they're gobbledygook, basically. Hard to remember, I'll grant you. But complex is good.
There was a website that I read about just the other day here, and they were saying that that 3 words was a takeoff on the 3-word geographic thing, that 40,000 words were in the geographic deal. So that's 40,000 in each of the 3, and you're up into the trillions or quadzillions or whatever of possibilities. And as Chris says, it's probably easy to remember, and all you have to do is shuffle a couple of words and you're still in the safe zone.
Also good to remember that the real serious hackers are going to run software. You know, they won't have to sit there and guess passwords. They have a computer doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that becomes another issue, and I've spoken to a few manufacturers about this. Nautel generally will stop you after a few errors, and they'll tell you to wait for 15 minutes or something like that. Some of the others will allow a dictionary attack, and clearly we have to find more software paying attention to that, because the higher computer capabilities, the faster the internet broadband, yeah, we're going to see more of that.
I think that's accurate, and I think that, I mean, our password, let's see, we'll ask in a direct message if Nautel ever changed their root password. And so I'll answer that one online, Bill. That one doesn't need to be a secret. But yeah, when we first came out with the Linux-based operating system transmitters, we used the same 24-character root password for every transmitter. And that was fine. And we made note that, hey, change this, you got to change this. And that was great until somebody couldn't remember it. Somebody else put it up on the web, the World Wide Web, so everybody could see. And,
Jeff, you're on the show floor, aren't you?
I am. It's noisy here.
The background's a little bit noisy. I don't know whether to suggest you have another microphone handy, or get your little microphone a little closer to you or something.
Whoops, there. Is this any better at all?
Not really, no.
No, so it's just this cheap headset. I had another one with me, but it's lost it. I'll just type any comments in the text or in the chat. But yeah, definitely complex passwords. And no, we don't. We use unique passwords on everything we ship now for the Linux kernel password.
Okay. When we get done here, I'm going to ask you to turn your camera around, show everybody the flora down there in Texas Association of Broadcasters. Good show. All right. Question came up in the chat box. Is there a firewall recommendation from the group? Anyone want to speak to that? If you want to put your hand up, I'll call on you, or just start talking.
Yeah, I've been using PFSense. You can use it on any kind of PC kind of hardware, generally speaking. It loads a very restrictive version of BSD or Unix rather, and it loads the firewall. It's very complete, and it has a web interface. It's a real firewall. You know, it's not just a kind of a plug and play NAT box, but the price is right.
That raises a good issue, because there's free firewalls and there are paid firewalls, and sometimes people will, just like with the VNC or VLC, the free one is the most easy to get on, but really it's not always the best one to have.
Yeah, PFSense supports 3 or 4 different kinds of VPN and kind of commercial grade encryption and all the kind of things that you'd like to have that typically don't find in the Home Depot firewall.
We have a comment here from the YouTube side talking about how the problems in the college cases, you need to have a separate isolated segment from the kiddies. And that unfortunately requires cooperation from IT people. And we talked about this some months ago, and we'll have to bring it back again. But the fact is that there are sometimes IT groups that it's not important for anybody else but what they want. And that's a problem. I can tell you experiences. I'm sure others here in the area, in the room, can tell us experiences that the IT people, they just sit there, I don't know, on their hands, on their brains, hard to tell. And you can't access a transmitter, or you can't access your audio stream, or in one case here, I drove 100 miles to a station and they couldn't see their console. They didn't have the software. They couldn't download anything because they have been firewalled from everything on the internet. They're not allowed to download even AnyDesk or download the software from their console manufacturer. And I told the GM of that station, I said, look, when you get your IT people in hand and you get your software and you have on your browser something better than Internet Explorer, which is out of service, I'll come back out, but not before.
Yeah, I don't want to point any fingers, but when there was a piece of equipment that we owned, a transmitter that we owned, that when the remote control embedded remote control software came out, the root password was the same on every instance that was sold, and that root password was published rather broadly, and I can't believe it that every script kiddie in the world didn't have it. So, and I talked to people that had their transmitters plugged into internet or campus networks, and boy, that's nail bait. You can change the frequency, you can change the power, you can change where it's getting its audio from. There's no limit to the kind of things. The only limit you have at that point, the only protection you have at that point is the standing wave ratio on the antenna. If they move it too far off the channel that you had it designed for.
Bill, do you have a price on PFSense that you remember?
Yeah, it's $0. It's an open source software, so you can get it and load it. They do have a supported version that they sell as well, and an appliance that they sell as well. But it runs pretty well on any 64-bit computer that has more than two cores and what is it, about 8 gigs or 4 gigs of main memory, and almost, you can run it on a thumb drive for a disk drive. You don't even need a disk drive. So
Jeff likes PFSense, he says, at least for personal use. And Jeff sends to us, to recap, the question was as asked, was whether we changed the root password for the Linux kernels in our boxes. It used to be common for all transmitters until it was published in a chat forum. I was wondering if Nautel was the one. I thought so. Since then, we've assigned a unique password to every transmitter and keep a copy on file in the test results. And that works fine until somebody out in the field changes that unique password, which
changes it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Well, it's 25 characters, but yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a whole bunch more. Now, we do have the ability to blow it out and reformat and bring back the root password, but that's you're going to lose a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I fortunately I've used that aspect when the transmitter locked up and had some problems, and have released that issue. So I know it works. I know it's not what you want to do because it's a long, involved process to go in there and delete the one. And okay, IP modem firewall, does that count as a firewall, or do you need something additional? Mark McMillan asks that. So if you pull up Cox modem, it's going to say firewall, low, medium, high. Is that sufficient of a firewall?
I guess the short answer is if you can't see the devices connected through it, then you're probably okay. And I use that my ISP firewall, at least the hardware firewall at my house. So yeah, I mean it's certainly better than nothing.
Yeah. So you'd want to put that on. Could put it low if you want. Use some network address translation. Use some other pointers, as was mentioned, a long or complex password, excuse me, and that way you can do that. It's interesting too that, again, so much product comes out, gear that has admin as the user, as the default, and it never gets changed. You come into a station, what's the user? Admin. What's the password? Well, it may or may not be nothing. And we've
admin.
Yeah, or admin. Yeah. So those are things you want to watch, and certainly, as Jeff pointed out, 19 seconds from the time they plugged the transmitter into the internet until somebody grabbed it. That's frightening.
Yeah, the only caution I would have about using the typical and what these quote firewall unquote things that you get kind of from the carriers are network address translation. So it translates the outside public internet routable address to an internal non-public or private network address that's not routable, so that people can't directly attack the things inside from the outside. What those things deprive you of, though, is any sort of logging of attacks, and so kind of when you're having trouble getting in or trying to figure out what a problem is, you really don't have access to that information about what's going on with that connection.
But at the same time, when you think about that network address translation, there are in fact software items out there that you can scan any IP address and it'll tell you what ports are open. Doesn't tell you what they lead you to, but it tells you which ones to try.
Well, it does. If you use the default settings on those things, there are no one-for-one translations, and by that I mean you can set up a NAT firewall or NAT router, whatever you want to call that box, to say if I get a connection request on this port number, I will connect it to this internal device. That's just as bad as saying you don't have a firewall, because virtually every, and it's not just hacker kits, every network analysis tool has a port sniffer, and it's looking for exposed ports, and people use those for finding holes in their network system so they can close them. But you can also use it to find open ports to connect to things.
So here's a question then. Suppose you have the transmitter and a codec and a computer, and that's all you have at a transmitter site. And you do a network address translation for each of those three things. And the little port catcher sees three ports. Now, it doesn't know which one it is, doesn't even know that it's a transmitter necessarily, but there's three things there. So would you say set up a couple of dozen fake translations?
Yeah, that comes under the heading of security and obscurity. If you build a large enough array of fake things that have actual things connected to them, eventually some people may get tired of it. Their computers will never get tired of it. They'll pound away at it until they figure it out. The other thing is that these algorithms not only will say this port is open, but it'll also say, here's the fingerprint of the device you're connected to. You're connected to a Unix system, you're connected to an Apple, you're connected to a Windows computer, you know, and sometimes even a version number. So they get a lot of information back from even just the garden variety network management tools that kind of everyone has access to. It's a dangerous world out there, and I wouldn't take it lightly.
Yep.
We haven't heard from it for a while, but there was a real rash with the barracks boxes that the pornographic hip hop was being ported into several transmitters in Texas and thereabout. I don't remember the exact call letters or locations today, but I do remember that one of them actually had an FCC inspector there wondering why the station allowed that on the air.
No, that's a good point, Barry. The barracks boxes were one of the things, again, vulnerable because they were on the open internet.
And you do kind of have an obligation to the FCC that you have positive control of, you know, your environment, your transmitter, and your specifically, and you know, anything that goes on the air is kind of your fault, no matter how it got there.
Thank you.
That's one of those things with the barracks boxes too. I mean, I checked this morning, there's 1,880 of them still visible. And any barracks box pre-2017 has got no username or password. So you can log into it, change the audio source, and then set a username and password. And that point, until somebody physically unplugs it or shuts the transmitter off, that's what's on the air.
I know, Bill, you told me that you have your folks twice a year, at least, checking to see if there are any boxes that are shown out there on the net, and then you go after them.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically what we do is we're always trying to see if we can find these devices that are exposed and if we can resolve who owns them. Again, you know, from looking at just the login page, we can get we can get some data. We don't log into them. I mean, and first and foremost, there's no way we would try to do that, because at that particular point you've committed a felony, and we're not about to go down that path. But if we can find out the serial number or something like that, we can maybe track it back to who purchased it and try to find information. If the unit isn't registered by us, we don't have a contact for it, came by way of a dealer thing, or sometimes, as we've seen, recyclers, people that have sold old used equipment or something else like that, and they come by these things. We do try to do the scans that we do, much like Jeff said. You know, you're looking out there, find out what's available, and see if we can contact these people in some way, shape, or form. We can get IP addresses. We'll know kind of where they are regionally. We'll look for other things that might lead us back to who purchased it or things like that. And that, again, follows exactly what FEMA says, what we've been saying all along. Keep these things updated. If we can find out who they are and let them know, then we can get them to hopefully shut them down and get them off the open internet. So we do that just as a general thing, saying, okay, let's go look again and see who's violating the first tenant in this whole security thing, and see if we might be able to help. But there are some that we can't find. We don't know.
Yeah, that's the big problem. And again, you mentioned this. I'll reinforce it, if not just to repeat it. When you buy equipment, let the manufacturer know that you've bought their equipment. Now, Mary, I'll just ask you this question, and Joel, I want to get to you. But Mary, when you sell a piece of equipment to someone, let's say a Kodak or whatever, it's not your responsibility to tell the manufacturer that you sold it out to Joel.
Oh, correct. Because most of them have where you can go in and register them for warranty and that.
They do. They have that.
Yeah.
But the question is, Jeff, would you have a number about Nortel when the transfers go out? How many people actually register before they have a problem?
No, we don't do warranty registration. We track, we won't ship it until we know who it's going to.
Well, you track yours by serial number.
Right. So it's a little different for us than an appliance company like Barrett's or Comrex or any of them.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Joel?
Yes. So I have some experience with PFSense. So PFSense is an open source project. I have many years of using it, as well as heard a lot of IT professionals. Every one of them I've heard who knew about it recommended it. I've never heard any of them to put it down particularly. So it's available as a community edition. Basically, it's full featured and it's free. You can install it yourself on your own hardware, but it doesn't come with any professional support doing it that way. You can run it on bare hardware, like a computer. You can run it as a virtual machine, which is what I'm doing, or you can run it in the cloud. You can also, and I've got a couple of them, use the maker of PFSense, Netgate, makes dedicated hardware boxes that come with all the PFSense stuff installed on it ahead of time, with the particular hardware accelerators and stuff that it needs to be good at the on-the-fly encryption and stuff for heavy network lifting. We're talking stuff that can handle encrypted traffic into the double-digit gigabit per second on the high end, and very reasonably priced stuff on the low end as well. So if you are getting some of their dedicated hardware, you can purchase annual support subscriptions from them if that's something that your company requires as well. So you can try it out free. I recommend everyone tries out the free version. And if that is something that works for you, then you can decide whether or not you want to go for a dedicated hardware appliance, whether you want to get support from them. It's just it's as expensive as you want to make it.
Or could we just have them get your email address for support?
I think that you are going to run pretty quickly into the limitations of what I am willing to do, because just because I don't like helping other people at the edge of my abilities, I'd rather work with what I'm comfortable in.
I was just being facetious.
I know.
Probably be less expensive.
Anything that comes for free, or anything you do for free, comes with a lifetime warranty.
It's worth what you pay for it, right?
Well, to go back to something Jeff said, Bill, all your boxes come out with serial numbers.
Oh yeah, the serial number, it does that. And that, I mean, we track it by serial number, but we also have kind of an indirect sales thing. So it might go to a dealer or to a systems integrator before it gets integrated into another project, and we may not know. So it lands at a warehouse because that's the ship to that we get for it. So we don't have it. Now, obviously, there's probably a big price differential between a Nortel transmitter and our box. I would most likely say, and again, that's one of the things around it. We do track it, and that's why if we do a search on the internet, we can find by just going to that IP address, we can typically see the serial number of the unit because it's associated on the login page.
And
if
you'll
you've
know,
got that,
and you'll know
that's-
who that was invoiced to,
Yeah. Well,
even if you don't have the end user.
we know who originally purchased it. And
Right.
again, that's the whole thing, trying to close that loop of, okay, yeah, it was purchased by this group or company, and then go to that company and say, hey, well, who did you sell it to? That kind of stuff. So again, we've closed down on a number of these things that way, but there's still some that we haven't been able to resolve.
And I wouldn't bypass Jeff without saying that, yeah, some of the no-tell transmitters get resold. Not a lot of them, but they do. And so there are some that they don't know where they are until someone calls in with the serial number and says, help.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's no way of controlling that.
No. But the smart technician, engineer, is going to do a audit of all the gear and make sure that it's all registered with the manufacturer.
Yeah.
That way, at least you get the updates.
Yeah, and that's the important thing too. Again, if it's registered, we send out notifications to our customers saying, hey, there's an update available, or things like that. So it does pay off, and it's pretty simple. And we're looking for things that we can do to make that registration process even easier. So that's going to be something we're going to be doing in the future. So we seriously encourage it, and I think it helps. Again, if there's things like this announcement that comes out from FEMA and everything else, just it raises the idea of this thing. Hey, we need to pay attention to it. Go out, find out, and see what's going on. So again, that to me has been very, very helpful.
Bill, as a way of thanking you a little bit for giving us so much of your time and information, I'll give you a little bit of merchandise time here. You have a program, as I recall, for those who have the older machines that are 2 dot something or 3 dot something. You have an upgrade arrangement that you could make available.
Yeah, we have, so the older systems, I mean, our oldest DASDECs are now, approaching almost 18, 19 years old from the very, very early ones. The DASDEC 2 series goes out from 2010, so we're talking 12 years on that. And the big thing that we've got going forward, I think, as I referenced previously, that we've got to keep moving ourselves up. And how do we get the latest security patches, things like that? We have to evolve our OS and our tools to be able to do that. So the older systems that don't support the newest series of stuff, we have what we call our uptrade program, where you can trade in the hardware, and any of the option keys, license keys that you've had added to it, any hardware options that are compatible, those transfer to the new box. So you're, in essence, pulling out the change, as I've always referenced it, in the analog days, you're changing your turntable without having to buy all new records. And that's a great thing to do, because there's a lot of money invested in the records, but I just want to change the turntable. So if I can upgrade the hardware, that's a big thing. And the uptrade program is something that works favorably. The other thing that's a benefit on the uptrade program is it maintains continuity of all of your logs. So when we get the old unit back and marry it with the new unit, we copy all of your logs, your EAS logs, all your configuration files, all of your usernames, passwords, and everything into the new box, so that when you get it back, it's essentially plug and play. And you maintain continuity of your logs from the day you left that out of service, mark it out of service, and the day you restore it to service. So it's a great way to do that and get the latest stuff. And now it's going to be the latest software, it's going to be the latest hardware, and it's coming with a 2-year warranty that you would get from a new piece of equipment. You can extend the warranty, so there's a lot of benefits to it, and it's a worthwhile thing to look at. So you're not throwing it away or having to discard it. You're actually taking the value out of it and applying it.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'm not going to chase you away, Bill, but I think we've covered the DASDEC pretty well.
I actually have one last question, Barry.
Sure,
if I
go right ahead.
Get it, and it's specifically for Bill.
Yep.
So I've always been curious. The government works in strange and mysterious ways when it establishes these things, and I wonder if how secure is CAP IPAWS if you have a man in the middle on a network Is there any embedded protection, public key encryption, anything in the IPAWS cap stuff that would keep somebody from spoofing an alert?
So, Bill, it's a great question because we actually build equipment that sends into IPAWS. And there is quite a bit of stuff that they have put in place. And I think that's one of the things. In fact, last night on Jimmy Fallon, he kind of threw FEMA under the bus and said, oh, you know, EAS is announced that it's hackable. And that really wasn't the case. And it was kind of a false flag against FEMA. But they have really established a great deal of security on being able to put something into IPAWS. Again, you know, you're looking at a honeypot. Where am I going to have the most impact if I go after something? And I think that your question's well established. There are things like you have to have. There is first of all aside from secure communications to the device, you know, using some standard IP protocols. When you communicate, you have to have an ID, and there's another key that's associated with the user. That key comes from IPAWS. It's unique to each user. So that's first, you know, as a secondary thing about it. The other thing is that they, in the memorandum of understanding that you sign as an alert originator with FEMA, they have very specific rules. In other words, someone that has, you know, one of our devices in Yakima, Washington can't send an alert for, you know, Monterey, California. So they look at every alert that comes in there and they compare it against a whole litany of things to verify authenticity of it, where it is it, you know, is it valid? You know, you can't send a national alert, you can't do this, and even alert types. So there's quite a bit of stuff that they've done a very, very good job of maintaining kind of that front end so that someone can't get in there and generate an erroneous alert. So keys that are in there, the security of the device, registering it, the information about what and who's sending and various things like that all come into play. So there's I'd say it's a pretty well tiered setup.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the instance where if that ID is fixed and is snoopable, and you're on a college campus and you're sending stuff, you know, logging into IPAWS, all that stuff is kind of floating around the campus. You know, can you sniff the ID and see it? Is it a fixed ID or is it an ID that's encrypted, you know, this
would only apply, and I understand when you think about, you know, like the number of people at a campus, but this only applies to people that are alert originators. So this is EOCs or things like that. So those are the only guys that have access to put something into it. And so again, there's a lot more of that security stuff that's kind of applied to those things than what you would have it's someone actually receiving from IPAWS. That's a lot easier if you're just receiving from IPAWS. There's still some information in there about, you know, the digital certificate, about, you know, validating that it actually came from IPAWS. So you'll see those messages have a digital cert, so you know that it came from IPAWS, that there isn't a man in the middle just trying to hit your station and do that. So again, some of those things are already in play. But I mean, typically a college campus is not a EOC, they're not an alert originator. So those things are a little bit more secure, I would say, just because of the nature of where they are.
Yeah. I mean, there are some primary stations and things like that, but they wouldn't be putting out IPAWS or caps.
Yeah.
Bill, we got a note here in the chat from Randall Miller, and he says a shiny new DASDEC 3 is in the mail for us right now. We use the uptrade program as well, so our 212 DASDEC won't be going into our equipment museum.
There you go. That's it. Yeah, we actually take the old units and break them down and recycle them. Take the metal apart and send it to a metal recycler. We take the electronics and send it to an e-recycler. So it's not reused or anything else like that. It actually goes in for full recycle.
Appreciate that. Okay. Anyone else have a question for Bill or Jeff or anyone about the EAS, DASDEC, or you know, do you like the DASDECs? Do you dislike the DASDECs? Anyone have a comment?
I'd like to just make a quick comment about Bill Putney's comment. I would hope that a good campus has an IT department that's smart enough to have VLANs and segregated so that the student body doesn't have access to the broadcast, and or for that matter, how about the financial and the records keeping? I mean, this is basic, basic IT architecture that I would hope that any campus with 100 students or more would have someone that knows how to implement this and maintain it properly.
I guess that's what you'd hope, and I've seen some pretty big organizations with some pretty broken IT staffs. Is all the only comment I can make.
Okay. Well, again, Bill, thank you so much. Appreciate your devoting the time to us. You're not being chased away. We'll keep talking.
Oh, it's
here.
okay.
Want to bring Jeff in and have him turn the camera around and show us a little bit of the floor at the TAB, and either we can talk about that or stay on security or something similar.
No, thanks, Barry. I'll just mute myself and let you go.
Thanks.
So TAB floor, right now, this is one aisle out of 7 or 8. There's well over 100 exhibitors here and probably 1,000 attendees, give or take. And so, of course, all the transmitter manufacturers, if it's shiny stuff, they've got it here. It's pretty cool. Actually, one of our attendees, frequent attendees to this, Mr. Kenneth Klein, is here from New Mexico.
Is he? Is he with you right now?
He is not. He was hanging around earlier. If you rewind in the YouTube video, you'll see him at about 5 minutes in because he walked behind me to wave. But
I saw that.
But yep. So it's been a really good show. I mean, it's the first one in 3 years, and folks are, as you were saying earlier, they're glad to be back out. I noticed when you were running through the list, I'll be in Nebraska next week. Jeff Wilson will be in New Mexico. The week after that, I'm in Alabama. It's going to be a busy rest of the summer.
Yeah, very good. I've always felt the TAB was one of the better regionals. The Great Lakes was another good one up in Lansing. And of course, the Broadcasters Clinic in Madison has had a sterling reputation. But the TAB always had a good program, good people, and a really nice floor. And they feed you too.
Oh yeah, they do. There was brisket, sliders, tacos. There was all kind of great stuff here at lunch. I may or may not gain a pound or two just walking around.
All right.
On that note, I am going to get back to work and go do some of whatever it is they pay me to do. But thanks for having me again.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being around. We'll see you next opportunity. Those of you that are with us, what do you think about these conventions? Do you find them still useful? Or Josh, are you still with us? The next best thing? What should we be doing in order to get good demonstrations of equipment and get the understanding that we want?
I am still here. I got the baby with me. As far as the conventions go, I'm very green in the industry. I'm going to my first convention at a podcast movement at the end of August. So I'm not overly familiar with how they work in the industry. But with my experiences on the tour, I think that there is still a place for those kind of demonstrations. We're still obviously working on making the tour more efficient as far as demonstrations, as well as just displaying and having representatives for the products that coordinate with us. But overall, I do think that there is a place for the conventions. I am a bit more on the safe leaning side with the world right now. So like, I don't think that we really should be opening up conventions too heavily right now, just for health concerns. But overall, I do think that conventions still have a place in the industry.
Thank you. They are changing. Of course, the NAB has kind of pushed radio around 3 or 4 times now. The radio, does anyone know where the radio floor will be next year? They don't seem to have everybody together.
A
I think it's
closet
going to be
somewhere.
yeah, I think it's going to be a mixture. I know next year we're in West Hall.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't think all of radio's in West Hall.
No.
So it's kind of a mixture. That's the way it was this year too. It was a mixture. We were in North Hall this year. But I know some were in Central and some were in West and some were in the North Hall. So,
And if they open South Hall up, there'll be a few down there.
right.
So it's got, you know, you can look at it one way. It's gotten big. You can go, if you have a handful of places that you particularly want to see face to face, develop the relationship with their support people or salespeople, you can do that. Beyond that, I found that you can't cover the whole floor anymore.
No.
Not with the NAB, not with CES. 4 days, you can't do it. And few people try, because on the 4th day of NAB,
You're tired.
the vendors are all elsewhere.
I find that the regional shows are, for me as a vendor, I find those productive, because you actually have, outside of, I mean, NAB is so busy. Like, I've been at an NAB where I had people waiting to talk to me, and then they leave and come back and we're still waiting. When you go to the local shows, you have time to talk to the people, like you have time to discuss and sit down, and I think that the programming's probably more geared towards that market and the interest of that market, whereas NAB is kind of an umbrella and covers a lot of different topics for a lot of different markets. So that's kind of my take on the conventions.
Good point. Good point. And
a lot of the conventions like Nebraska, which I'm attending next week also, a lot of those engineers can't go to NAB because the managers won't pay for them to go.
Yeah, it has been about 6 years now, maybe longer, maybe 10 years since Clear Channel, iHeart, didn't send any of their local engineers anymore. CBS shut that down, Cumulus. I know that the reports from this year's convention in April largely were that the attendance was down dramatically.
Yes.
The ones who were there because they were interested in doing something.
Yes.
And getting COVID.
Yeah, a lot of that happened.
I know when KPTZ was getting started, there happened to be at that time a radio only show that came through the Seattle area, and I was able to go to that, and KPTZ actually built some stuff out of things we learned there. It was at one of the local colleges in Tacoma, I think, actually. It was very useful, but I haven't seen a lot of, I think a lot of these shows, I've seen a lot of shows like, go to the Midwest and see one of these shows. Well, if I'm going to go to the Midwest, I might as well go to Las Vegas.
From where you are, that makes all the sense in the world. For me, it's a day's drive, so that's not as big a deal. Although, I don't know. If you talk to people, some will say the COVID is now tame enough that it's like the flu. You'll get it, you'll get over it. Others are still, good grief. Look at all the people on TV newscasts where you see masks still in use in New York and other places. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on TV.
Well, you're more likely to get COVID in the TV parts of the NAB show than anywhere else. So,
Is that some sort of prejudice?
oh, not at all.
Because there was more floor traffic on TV?
Well, yeah, it's really crowded usually.
Okay. I've been getting a number of emails the last week about IBC, which is next month in Amsterdam. And that's another curious sort of convention. I've always felt that you learn a lot there. It's spread out in a curious way. The different companies are sometimes they're coherent, sometimes they're spread out. But the idea is that it is a more casual show. Just as Mary, you were talking about the regional ones, I found that going to IBC is where you develop a relationship with these companies. It's not looking for the cheapest equipment or something like that, but who's going to take care of you after your equipment has been in 5-6 years?
Barry, I think that goes, I spent many IBCs, and even going into when it used to trade off with the show in Switzerland. So, back and forth. The one thing I noticed about IBC, and I years ago even solicited NAB to think about and consider it, is it's a 5-day event. And I think part of that whole thing is trying to pack everything in to the limited amount of time you have in 4 days. It seemed rather counterintuitive to be a vendor and say, I'd like to spend an extra day. But quite frankly, from a vendor side, you've already sunk the cost of the floor space, the cost of the electricity, the cost of the airfare, everything is already sunk. And I've always thought that the best way that if possible, that we could do an NAB is to have it go Monday through Friday, so that people, if they were going to Vegas, they could come in and party the weekend before and then go to the convention center, maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or the people that came in late on Wednesday could do, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and stay for the weekend. I've just always thought that they should extend it. Again, it's a little bit more of a hassle from a vendor standpoint, but we've already sunk the cost. And I would like to have more time so people aren't racing away, or I got to get to this thing real quick, or I got to go here, so that we can spend more time with people. And that's one thing that definitely IBC is more a more casual type of event. I think it's because they offer more time.
NAB has tried. They've moved it around a little bit. This year they started on Sunday.
Same next year. Yeah.
Friday is a problem because, well, you're starting to run into
Because
holy
of
days.
Vegas, yeah.
You're running into holy days, not just religious holy days, but union holy days. If you want to pack up and move out on a Saturday or a Sunday, you're really facing some expensive situations. Whereas if you move in the Friday before and then leave on a Thursday or Friday, you're still in good shape. Mike McCarthy, who sadly has passed away, was very much involved in the Chicago convention business, his family. And we talked about this many times. This is one reason why the NAB doesn't go to Chicago anymore, because the union costs just got so astronomical. And then, I don't know, Bill, you can tell me, I remember one year when the internet, to get the internet on the floor for the NAB show was 1,000 or 6,000. I mean, it was just some incredible number.
Well, if you got, I think right now, if you want a single IP address, it's, I want to say $1,200 for the few days that you're going to have it.
It's incredible.
It's very expensive. And again, that's why I kind of say that you've already sunk the cost. And if we could get it over more days, it might, just might ease a little bit of that. There's a little bit that I think could be done. To that point too, I mean, again, you're already moving in on a weekend. You're paying, sometimes overtime fees. You're paying drayage. IBC, runs from Friday until Tuesday. So it actually goes over the weekend.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things. So you're actually not moving in and out on the weekend. You're moving in earlier in the week, setting things up, and you're there, again, starting on Friday and ending on Tuesday.
Well, maybe you might want to discuss with the NAB and have them start on a Friday. It's a curious way to go, but it makes sense, doesn't it? The only negative I'll have to say about Amsterdam, besides the fact that the room rates triple during IBC, I mean, literally triple. They give you a free bus pass, tram pass. They are very nice people to deal with, very hospitable. Unfortunately, my last IBC found a hotel full of bed bugs. I won't go back there again. Not at $200 a night. Not at $8 a night, frankly.
Yeah, I was going to say at any price. Yeah, Amsterdam, wonderful city to visit. It's very tough for accommodations. In fact, the last few times I was there, I rented an apartment, and it was because I was there for a total of 2 weeks because of my position and what I was doing in the particular venue. And so it was actually easier to become an Amsterdammer and live in an apartment, share that apartment with another mate, and be able to do that, then try to get a hotel room. And again, at the rates that they wanted. So there's a couple things around it, but other than that, after the show, Amsterdam's a great town to go explore and have fun. But
yeah, good food, nice place. Of course, Las Vegas is turning. One of the stories I read over the last few weeks, the Tesla tunnel notwithstanding, but every one of the hotels is now involved with these resort fees, parking fees, fees. And, it used to be, again, you used to be able to get up to Las Vegas, find a room that was not awfully expensive, have a meal that was not awfully expensive. I mean, I remember prime rib deals at $5.95 and shrimp cocktails for $1. Maybe that tells me I'm too old. I don't know, but you can't find anything up there anymore. That the buffets are $40 and $50 a piece.
Now it's family oriented, Barry.
Sorry?
My only experience with Amsterdam was in 2012. I went over there for Microsoft's Tech Ed, was there for I don't know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday arrangement. We found accommodations at a place called the Hotel Mercure. It's right on the river. It was about $70 a night, something like that. That's the most fun I've ever had going anywhere.
My first IBC, I was in the Dam Hotel. That's what it's called, the Dam Hotel. It's a half a block or so down from the train station, and it was reasonably comfortable and nice. But they said you got to get out. We've rented the rest of the week, and you're done. And I was very fortunate that some folks from, I think it was Digigram, had an unused reservation. And it was not cheap, but I was, still there in the city. I didn't have to go training out to another town. I suppose Airbnb has made some changes, but the hotels are just booked.
yeah,
I think
I've even stayed so far away as to stay in Utrecht and an hour train ride.
Yeah. Bill?
Yeah, Las Vegas changed. I think when they decided they wanted to be a family-friendly entertainment venue, and then gambling wasn't the entirety of their income, and they kind of changed the way they did business. There's kind of the way, and I don't know, it was published like that, but I mean, it's kind of the way I saw it go.
Years and years and years ago, one of the guys from BE George turned me on to the motel that he used. It's right there at the top of the strip. Cost $160 for the week. You could drive right up to your door, and it was comfortable. What more do you need? Then today you're going to pay 100 and something for a room, plus parking, plus resort fees. It isn't as fun a place as it used to be.
Should have it in Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Jeff's gone. You waited too long. Jeff would have us up there. That's another nice place, by the way. Been to Nova Scotia.
There's a lot of nice places. The question is, you got to find a nice place with enough hotel rooms. If you did something bizarre, and it may be a problem for some of the vendors, if you did something like you said, well, we have a radio NAB, and we have a TV NAB, and we have an NAB for all the crossovers, and you stagger them in a less popular or less hotel rich environment than Las Vegas is, maybe. But you get a bunch of radio people that only sell to radio at 1 week, and you get the A plus B people in the middle and the TV people at the end, and you don't book up so many rooms so fast. I suppose the vendors have to stay on the road longer, but you have more choices then.
Well, that's what Mary was saying, whether it be Austin or Omaha or Newfoundland. Yeah, there would be, obviously the hotel is there and not much else in terms of business, but you could go up to Maine. You could spend a couple of days there between Dielectric and Shively and hop over to Newfoundland.
And Nautel, Maine as well in Bangor.
Yeah.
And we're about 7 hours away from the Nautel's Nova Scotia Halifax headquarters as well.
Right.
And while you're in Maine, if you're up in that northern section, you could take a weekend and go over to Bar Harbor in the Acadian National Forest, a little vacation along the way.
Yeah. John White took me down to the Shevardnadze River, and we rafted the waters. It was wonderful.
When I worked at NAB back in the early 80s, they explained to me why they were moving to Vegas. They had done the One Atlanta convention, and then they were going to Vegas. And they explained to me that there were certain requirements that had to be made for a convention. Number one, there had to be a convention center that was big enough. And then they also said there had to be enough hotel rooms and airport that can support everything. And besides airport, a highway that could support the trucks coming in. And that was what why they chose on Vegas that time. And that was, I guess that must have been like 86, 87 or something like that.
It was after the last one in Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, the last one in Atlanta, I think, was 90 or 91 because Vegas was being refurbished or something at that time.
Yeah. Atlanta was 90.
Yeah.
Hey, Barry, I've got a thing I've got to do at the bottom of the hour, so I'm going to bid you farewell. Thanks again for the opportunity to kind of explain what was going on, and I think hopefully people will understand it. Good conversation on security too. Bill, thanks for your input on that, and we'll look to catch up with you guys a little later.
Very good. Thank you.
Great. Have a great afternoon.
Well, we still have about 40 odd folks here, close to 50 with us. Have
Some
you
of
been?
us are odder than others.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Brian, as long as you spoke up, I know you at the museum right there, but have you been to any of the conventions?
It's been a while, but one of the things that keeps me employed is that Chuck is at TAB right now, so I'm hired so he can be there without having to worry about his radio stations.
Very good. Very good.
I'm going to repeat something I said at the beginning, but I think we've got a few more people. I'm looking for someone that has some experience with Arduinos that could give me a few tips. Not here, obviously, but we can contact off of here and see what we can do. Also, another question, this one I might more likely to get an answer to. Does anyone know how to get a hold of a real person at Nielsen?
That's a good question.
We have easily 15 to 20 pieces of their equipment sitting in our station, taking up space. We want to get rid of it. We are no longer a Nielsen subscriber. We don't want the stuff. And it's right now doing nothing but taking up space. And hate to toss it into a landfill because technically it's not ours to toss. But
don't you have a storage policy? Anything left after 30 days becomes property of the station and subject to disposal?
Who knows?
What about management? Don't they have a contract with Nielsen? They know the salesman?
We terminated that contract with Nielsen over 5 years ago.
Okay.
And nothing. And
I have a possibility.
I tried emailing them.
I have a possibility for you, Gordon. Let me get to you after we get done. Jim posted something here in chat that brought up two thoughts in mind. One is you've certainly seen the news about the floods in eastern Kentucky, and almost every news report that I saw mentioned that there was no power, no cell service, no WEA. It was EAS that was being used. To what extent, I don't know, but that was the only source of information was broadcast. Jim says, is there any news on what happened in the Philadelphia area with the national test last summer? And that takes, unless there's somebody here from Pennsylvania, I'm going to have to say that I don't remember a specific, other than there were certain areas that did not get the test because of storms. That was one of the things that they kind of learned, that by using 50 kilowatt AMs, if you happen to have a nasty storm during an EAS test or event, a good number of receivers won't get it.
Yeah, I think there's some lessons to learn from some of these disasters that we see, that, you know, everybody who says, all the emergency managers who say, well, we have whatever that text over your cell phone system. We have that. We don't need broadcasters anymore. You know, well, we have internet. We get all of our emergency alerts through, you know, through texts from internet. You know, there are some real gaps if you depend on there being electricity and networks and cell sites operational after certain kinds of disasters.
Yeah.
And we were lucky, very lucky, that we had an emergency manager in the county that kind of recognized that right away and created a coalition between the radio stations in town and the Office of Emergency Management. Actually set up a studio for us in the Emergency Operations Center so that we could give information directly from the public information officer, out to people without kind of guessing or editorializing or any of that kind of stuff. And that's worked out very well for us.
Jim, if you go to the BDR, under articles, there is the latest EAS news. And as it turns out, we go back to last summer, sure was, stations in the Philadelphia and South Jersey area did not get an NTP because the PEP was apparently unable to relay. So that answers your question. I think that answers your question. What happened in Philadelphia? So anyone, that you are looking for the latest EAS news, this is the place to find sort of the items that I think are important and will be helpful to you. And you're always welcome to make suggestions for things that could be added. In fact, that's my constant request. If there's a topic for a Thursday, like this week, that you would like to see us address, let me know. If there's something you'd like to see in the BDR, let me know. And we'll endeavor to cover it.